Hi everyone. Hi ma'am. Good afternoon. I'm Jenna Patrici Barangan from Team Happy. My topic to discuss is that about my topic rather is that attempts to amend or change the 1987 Constitution. The 1987 Constitution provides three methods by which the Constitution can be amended, all requiring ratification by a majority vote in a national referendum. The three methods are: 1. Constituent Assembly; second, Constitutional Convention; and third, People Initiative. By using this three method, there were efforts to amend or change the 1987 Constitution, starting with the presidency of Fidel B. Ramos, who succeeded Corazon Aquino. The first attempt was in 1995, when then Secretary of National Security Council Jose Almonte drafted a constitution, but it was exposed to the media and it never prospered. The second effort happened in 1997, when a group called PERMA hoped to gather signature from voters to change the constitution through a people's initiative. Many were against this, including then Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago, who brought the issue to court and won, with the Supreme Court judging that the people's initiatives cannot push through without an enabling law. Succeeding President. First, Joseph Ejercito Estrada formed a study commission to investigate the issues surrounding charter change, focusing on the economic and judiciary provision of the Constitution. This effort was also blocked by different entities. After President Estrada was replaced by another people power and succeeded by his Vice President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. Then, second, House Speaker Jose de Venecia endorsed constitutional change through a constituent assembly, which entails both of the House to propose amendments or revision to the Constitution. This initiative was also not successful since the term of President Arroyo was mired in controversy and scandal, including the possibility of Arroyo extending her term as president, which the Constitution does not allow. And third succeeding president is that President Benigno Aquino III had no marked interest in charter change, except those emanating from different members of Congress, including the Speaker of the House, Feliciano Belmonte Jr., who attempted to introduce amendments to the Constitution that concerned economic provision that aimed toward liberalization. This effort did not see the light of the day. So, we proceed to what is federalism. Federalism in the Philippines was supported by President Duterte in the 2016 presidential election, saying that it will evenly distribute wealth in the Philippines instead of concentrating it in Manila, the capital of the country. As a form of government, a central governing authority and constituent political unit constitutionally share sovereignty. Applied to the Philippines, the country will be broken into autonomous regions. Each region will be further divided into local government units. Region will have the primary responsibility of industry development, public safety and instruction, education, healthcare, transportation, and many more. Each region will also take charge of their own finances, plans for development, and law, exclusive to their area. while on the other hand, the national government will only handle matters of national interest, such as foreign policy and defense, among others. In this system, it is possible for the central government and the region to share certain power. So, federalism has the advantages and disadvantages, or advantages or pros, disadvantages or cons. So first, let me discuss to you about the advantages of federalism on the government. Each region may custom-fit solution to problems brought about by their distinct geographic, cultural, social, and economic context. Second, regions also have more power over their finances since they handle majority of their income and only contributes to a small portion to the national government. They can choose to directly fund their own development projects without asking the national government go signal. Federal system could also promote specialization since the government could focus on nationwide concerns while regional governments can take care of administrative issues. And second is the advantages or cons on the federalism on government. First, it creates competition among regions. It could also be a challenge to achieve unity in the country. There might be regions which are not ready to govern themselves or have lesser resources, which could mar them deeper in poverty and make development uneven in the country. There could be issues regarding overlaps in jurisdiction, since ambiguities may arise while national ends and regional begins or vice versa. So, in presidency of Rodrigo, in an upsurge of populism, President Rodrigo Duterte won the 2016 presidential election in a campaign centering on a law and order proposing to reduce crime by killing 10,000 of criminals. He is also known advocate federalism, a compound mode of government combining a central or federal government with regional government in a single political system. On December 7, 2016, he signed an executive order creating a consultative committee to review the 1987 Constitution. So, the second topic is the policies on agrarian reform. So first, what is agrarian reform? Agrarian reform is essentially the ratification of the whole system of agriculture. Second, it is an important aspect of the whole system because nearly half of the population is employed in the agricultural sector and most citizens live in rural areas. And it is centered in the relationship between production and distribution of land among farmers. It is also focused on the political and economic class character of the relations of production and distribution in farming and related enterprises and how this connect to the wider class structure. For further understanding about the policies on agrarian reform, my co-groupmate will be able to discuss to you that classmate. And that's all. Thank you.
So hi everyone, my name is Junami Gumban and my assigned topic is to report about the land ownership in the Philippines under Spain. So when the Spaniards colonized our country, they brought with them the system called Pueblo agriculture, where rural communities, often dispersed and scattered in nature, were organized into a pueblo and given land to cultivate. So those Filipinos who are scattered or nagkawatak-watak ay binigyan ng lupain para pagtaniman. So, but the Filipinos are cannot owned or not allowed to own a land in the Philippines. So, it's quite unfair, or it's really unfair since ang Pilipinas ay ating sariling lupa or our own land, pero yung mga Filipinos dati ay walang karapatan para magmay-ari ng isang lupain. Even 1 hectare, they have no rights to own that, since ang nagmamay-ari is the King of Spain. Yeah. The Filipinos are just given land to cultivate them. And they pay their colonial tribute to the Spaniards authorities to form in a form of agricultural products. So later on, through the law of Indies, the Spanish crown awarded tracts of land like to religious orders, to repartimientos for Spanish military as rewarded for their service, and Spanish encomenderos, those mandated to manage the encomienda or the lands given to them. So, repartimientos is a system which the crown allowed the certain colonies to recruit indigenous people to force labor for them. So, encomenderos is also was also granted the right to compel indigenous people to work for them and pay tribute to them. So, that is where Filipinos work and paid their tributes to the encomendero, like what I've said earlier. Filipinos were not given the right to own land and only work in them so that they might have a share of the crops and pay tribute. So like what I've said earlier, Filipinos are not allowed to own the land. Well, they can, so Filipinos are only given the land to cultivate them, and para dito po sila magkuha, para doon din sila kumukuha ng kanilang profits and shares. In that way, they can also pay their tribute to the encomenderos where they work for. So the encomienda system was an unfair and abusive system, as compras y vandalas became the norm for the Filipinos farmers working the land. They were made to sell their products at a very low price or surrender their products to the encomenderos, who sold this as a profit. So this one's is really abusive and unfair for Filipinos. Kasi yung mga mga nakukuha nila sa kanilang pagtatanim is they will only sell their products in a low price. So maliit lang ang kanilang kikitain, magbibigay pa sila ng kanilang mga like tax, something like that, to the encomenderos, or they will give their all products to encomenderos, and katong yung mga encomenderos is ibibenta nila yung products para magka-profit sila. So Filipinos who's under encomenda are also needed to are required to render services to encomenderos without kuan that were unrelated to the farming. Hacienda system developed in 19th century as Spanish government implemented policies that would fast-track the entry of colony into the capitalist world. So, the economy was tied to the world market as the Philippines became the one of the exporter of raw materials and the importer of goods. Agricultural exports were demanded and the hacienda system was developed as a new form of ownership. So in 1860s, Spain enacted a law ordering landholders to register their landholdings. And only those who knew this benefited from this. So, ang mga lupain ay inangkin at nairehistro sa pangalan ng ibang tao. So, many peasants' families who were assigned to the land in the earlier days of colonization were driven out of force to come under the power of these people claimed rights to the land because they held a title. So, those Filipinos who were not aware of this were kanang yung kawawa kasi syempre wala silang kaalam-alam tapos sa kanila yung lupain pero but they don't have any title. So, 'di ba? Kawawa talaga sila. And we have known that the Filipinos at that time are wala talagang masyadong na kaalam-alam about sa mga ganitong klaseng bagay. Kaya kaya madali silang mauto or wala silang magagawa kasi wala silang alam. Hindi sila they cannot work or they cannot do anything about this since wala silang mga proofs or something na kaya nilang gawin para maangkin yung lupa na para talaga sa kanila. So this is the primary reason why revolts in the Philippines were often agrarian in nature. Before the colonization, Filipinos had communal ownership of land. The system introduced by the Spaniards became a better source of hatred and discontent for the Filipinos. So, the religious orders, the biggest landowners in the Philippines, also became a main source of abuse and exploitation for the Filipinos, increasing the rent paid by the Filipinos on a whim. So, we all know that dati, yung talagang nasa simbahang Katoliko na nagtatrabaho like So, the next topic would be the land ownership in the Philippines under Americans. Since we all know that after sa colonization ng Spaniard sa Pilipinas, yung mga Amerikano naman ang sumunod. Okay, so let's proceed to the land ownership in the Philippines under the Americans. So, the Americans were aware that the main cause of social unrest in the Philippines was landlessness, and they attempt to put an end to the deplorable conditions of the tenant farmers by passing several land policies to increase the small landholders and distribute ownership to a bigger number of Filipino tenants and farmers. So, I think this one is the good news for the Filipinos at that time, since they will be distribute by a mga lupain, especially those who are farmers. So, the Philippines Bill of 1902 provided regulations on the disposal public lands rather. So, for those who are private individual, they may own 16 hectares of land, while those corporate landholders may have 1,024 hectares of land. So, the Americans were also given rights to own agricultural lands in the country. So, the Philippine Commission also enacted Act Number 496 or Land Registration Act, introduced torrent system. So, ginawa ito upang matugunan ang kawalan ng mga naunang talaan ng mga naibigay na titulo ng lupa at magsagawa ng tumpak na mga survey sa lupa. Also, home spread program introduced in 1903, limited areas are in Northern Mindanao and Luzon. Ang programang ito ay nagpahintulot sa isang nangungupahan na pumasok sa isang negosyong pang-agrikultura sa pamamagitan ng pagkuha ng isang sakahan na hindi bababa sa 16 na hectare. Then again, this is only limited to the areas of Northern Mindanao and Luzon, where colonial penetration had been difficult for Americans, a problem they inherited from the Spaniards. So, if you think na naging ang land ownership is naging better under American period, no, you're wrong. In fact, it get even worsened because there was no limit to the size of lands holding people could possess, and the accessibility of possession was limited to those who could only afford to buy, register, and acquire fixed property titles. So, kawawa yung mga mahihirap o nasa mababang antas lang ng mga Pilipino kasi hindi sila makaroon ng lupain kasi wala silang pera pangbili. Lalong-lalo na yung mga Filipino dati na walang kaalam-alam tungkol dito. So, hindi lahat ng mga lupa na naibigay galing sa mga Amerikano ay binigay nila sa mga magsasaka na walang lupa. Yung most of the lands are being used by Americans as a negosyo sa mga Amerikano at Pilipino. Some are sold and some are rent. Yung ipinarirenta nila para sa kanilang sariling interes. So, this early land reform program was also implemented without support mechanisms. If the landless peasant farmer received land, he only can receive land, nothing more. So, maraming mga Pilipino ang napilitang bumalik sa pangungupahan at yung mga mayayamang Pilipino ay binili at pinilit na kinuha yung mga lupain ng mga ibang Pilipino na hindi kayang bayaran yung kanilang mga utang. So, the system introduced the Americans enabled more lands to be placed under tenancy, which had widespread peasant uprising, such as the Colorum and Sakdal uprising in Luzon. So, the peasants and workers found refuge from millenarian movements that gave them hope that change could still happen through militancy. So, these groups of people gave hopes to the farmers or workers na may pag-asa pa para mabago yung mga ganitong klaseng pamamaraan ng mga Amerikano, or more like much better, or mas nag-hope sila na mas stop na yung ganitong pamamaraan. So, okay, the Sakdal or Sakdalista uprising was a peasant rebellion in central Luzon that lasted for only 2 days. Okay, in May 2 to 3 in 1935. So, it was easily crushed by government forces then. But these historical events tells us about the social inequality brought about the issues of land ownership and tenancy in the country. So another thing, the Sakdal word means to accuse, helmed by Benigno Ramos led the establishment of Partido Sakdalista in 1933. In 1934, they did well in general elections, scoring 3 seats in the House of Representatives. So this encouraged them to attempt an uprising in 1935. Upon being crushed, Ramos fled to Tokyo and Partido Sakdalista collapsed. So sa mga taon ng pamahalaan ng Commonwealth, lalong lumala ang sitwasyon nang dumami ang mga pag-aalsa ng mga magsasaka at ang relasyon ng Panginoong may lupa at nangungupahan ay lalong hindi nagkakalayo. President Quezon laid down a social justice program focused on the purchase of haciendas which were to be divided and sold to tenants. So his administration also created the National Rice and Corn Corporation, also known as NARIC, to assign public defenders to assist peasants in court battles for their rights to the land, and a court of industrial relations to exercise jurisdiction over disagreements arising from the landowner-tenant relationship. So, finally, nagkaroon na ng pag-asa yung mga magsasaka na ipaglaban ang kanilang mga rights for their land. And thank to Pangulong Quezon, because he is the one who implemented that. He's the one who implemented that administration. So the Homestead program also continued through the National Land Settlement Administration or NLSA. Efforts toward agrarian reform by the Commonwealth failed because of many problems such as budget allocation for the settlement program and widespread peasant uprising. So the World War II put a halt to all interventions to solve these problems as the Japanese occupied the country. So nananta to'y hope, but the Commonwealth was failed to do this task because of the problems such as kanang pag-allocate sa pera, hindi enough. Tapos yung mga maraming pag-aalsa ng mga Filipino. So lahat ng yun ay ang ikalawang digmang pandaigdig ay huminto sa lahat ng mga intervention upang malutas ang mga problemang ito habang sinasakop tayo ng mga Hapones. And that's all. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Kisha Paula Macabinlar and I'm going to discuss the post-war interventions towards agrarian reform. After the establishment of the Philippines' independence in 1946, the problems of land tenure remained. This became worse in certain areas, thus the Congress of the Philippines revised the tenancy law. President Manuel A. Rojas enacted the law Republic Act No. 34. It is established the 70-30 sharing arrangements and regulating shared tenancy contract. Under the term of President Elpidio Quirino, the Land Settlement Development Corporation, or LASIDICO, was established to facilitate the acquisition, settlement, and cultivation of agricultural lands. It is later became the National Resettlement and Rehabilitation Administration, or NARA, under the administration of President Ramon Magsaysay. Ramon Magsaysay enacted the law Republic Act No. 1199, or Agricultural Tenancy Act of 1954. It is governed the relationship between landowners and tenant farmers by organizing shared tenancy and leasehold system. The law provided the security of tenure of tenants. It also created the Court of Agrarian Relations. Agricultural Tenancy Commission administer problems created by tenancy. Next is the Agricultural Credit and Cooperative Financing Administration, or ACCFA, provide warehouse facilities and assist farmers in marketing product. And the Agricultural and Industrial Bank provide easier terms in applying for homestead and other farmlands. National Resettlement and Rehabilitation Administration, or NARA, accelerated the government's resettlement program and distribution of agricultural lands to landless tenants and farmers. And the Hokbalahap, or Hokbong Bayan Laban Sabon, it is a movement of rebels in Central Luzon to resettle in areas where they could restart their lives as peace citizens. Under the term of President Diosdado Macapagal, there is a major stride in land reform arrived. The following are the declaration of policy. First, to establish owner cultivatorship and the economic family-side farm as the basis of Philippines agriculture to industrial development. Second, to achieve a dignified existence for the small farmers free from pernicious institutional restraints and practices. Third, to create a truly viable social and economic structure in agricultural conducive to greater productivity and higher farm incomes. Fourth, to apply all labor laws equally and without discrimination to both industrial and agricultural wage earners. Fifth is to provide a more vigorous and systematic land resettlement program and public land distribution. And last is to make small farmers more independent, self-reliant, and responsible citizens, and a source of genuine strength in our democratic society. This could abolish shared tenancy in the Philippines, prescribe a program to convert tenant farmers to lessees and become owner cultivators, aim to free tenant from tenancy, emphasize owner cultivatorship and farmer independence, equity, productivity improvement, and public land distribution.
Hello ma'am, good afternoon. My name is James Martin Campugan. I'm Group Happy. I will now report about agrarian reform effort under Marcos. President Marcos declared martial law in 1972, enabling him to essentially wipe out the landlord-dominated Congress. Through his technocrats, he was able to expand exclusive executive power to start a fundamental restructuring of government, including its effort in solving the deep structural problem of the countryside. Now we are report about the The primary SARS Presidential Decree No. 2721 October 1972. The presidential Decree No. 27 or the Code of Agrarian Reform of the Philippines became the core of agrarian reform during Marcos regime. The government shall guarantee such amortization with share of stock in government-owned and government-controlled corporation. Title to land acquired pursued this this the Department of Agrarian Reform through its the Secretary is wholly empowered of the promulgate rules and regulation for the implementations of decree. This is the operation of land transfer or lands occupied by.
Hi ma'am, good afternoon. I'm Jana Patrici Barangan. I'm going to discuss about the post-1986 agrarian reform. So first, what is agrarian reform? Agrarian reform can either refer narrowly to government-initiated or government-backed redistribution of agricultural land, or broadly to an overall redirection of the agrarian system of the country, which often includes land reform measures. Overthrow of Marcos and the 1987 Constitution, it resulted in a renewed interest and attention to agrarian reform, as President Corazon Aquino envisioned agrarian reform to be the centerpiece of her administration social legislation, which proved difficult because her background betrayed her. She came from a wealthy family and landed clan that owned the Hacienda Luisita. On July 22, 1987, Aquino issued Presidential Proclamation 131 and Executive Order 229, which outlined her land program. In 1988, the Congress passed Republic Act No. 6657, or the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law, or CARL, which introduced the program with the same name, Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, or CARP. It enabled the redistribution of agricultural lands to tenant farmers from landowners, who were paid in exchange by the government through just compensation and allowed them to retain not more than 5 hectares. Corporate lands owners were, however, allowed under law to voluntarily divest a proportion of their capital stock, equity, or participation in favor of their workers. Hacienda Luisita reorganized itself into a corporation and distributed stock to farmers. Under the term of the President Ramos, CARP implementation was speeded in order to meet the 10-year time frame. Despite limitation and constraints in funding, logistics, and participation of involved sectors, by 1996, the Department of Agrarian Reform, or DAR, distributed only 58.25% of the total area target to be covered by the program, which covered the carp. Ramon signed Republic Act No. 8532 in 1988 to amend CARL and extend the program to another 10 years. It is also to address the lacking funding and dwindling time for the implementation of the CARP. And that's all, and that's the end of the topic. That's all. Thank you.